Welcome, everyone. Hi. I'm Janine Parker, an artist in residence in the dance department at Williams College and one of this week's Pillow Scholars in Residence. And this is Iain Webb, director of the Sarasota Ballet.
Hi, everybody.
Let's see. So I'm going to introduce Iain a little more fully in a moment. But first, I just want to say that these Saturday afternoon Pillow Talks cover a wide range of mostly dance-related topics, often like today with one or more of the artists involved in one of that week's performances. The whole list of summer Pillow Talks is listed on the website, but I do want to call your attention to next Saturday's talk, which will feature Wendy Perrin, a writer, choreographer, and guest curator of this summer's Simply Marvelous exhibit in Blake's Barn. And if you haven't partaken, please do. Right in there, which celebrates, as he's usually described, the one and only Norton Owen, the Pillow's Director of Preservation. No doubt that conversation between colleagues and friends, Norton and Wendy, will be one for the ages, so I wanted to call your attention to that. So now, let me tell you a little bit more about Iain. This is from the bio from the program. Iain Webb, director, danced for 18 years with both the Sadler's Wells Royal Ballet and the Royal Ballet. His leading roles included Ashton's The Dream, The Two Pigeons, Filmo Garde, Cinderella, David Bentley's The Snow Queen, Fokines, Les Sylphides, Petrushka, Balanchine's Prodigal Son. Retiring from the stage in 1996, Webb took on the role of rehearsal director for Matthew Bourne's Swan Lake and Cinderella, and later assistant director for Tetsuya Kumakawa's K-Ballet. In 2007, Webb became director of the Sarasota Ballet, introducing over 100 ballets into the company's repertoire, and following their 2014 Sir Frederick Ashton Festival garnered national and international acclaim. That's just a little bit, but that's what's in the program. Iain and I consulted and decided that the description for our talk, which in part reads, Webb will share his thoughts and inspirations for animating ballet today. We decided to not refer to ballet cartoons, so if any of you were expecting that, we apologize in advance. Yes. But in all seriousness, we'll frame the idea of animating ballet through the lens of performing older works as well as the future of new choreographers and choreography. And because we got a bit of a late start, we might not get to everything, but we will save some time for questions and comments from the audience, should you have them. So part of the now and the future is indeed the past. In many, not all dance companies, but certainly in the Sarasota Ballet, which is committed to, along with new works, legacy ballets. So we expect that this informal conversation will touch upon the past as well as the now and the future. So I'd like to start with the now. The young dancers who are perhaps just starting their careers. And I have a quote from the Observer article from June mentioning whether, if, how ballet can continue. There's often prognostications that ballet is going to die. In the UK-based Observer, writing in June about the Royal Ballet, sponsored Next Generation Festival, the writer Sarah Crompton notes, quote, "The death of classical ballet, long predicted, never happens because a new generation of dancers finds themselves entranced by its discipline and drama. Wave after wave keeps on coming through good times and bad." So Iain, I want you to go back in time to when you were that younger person who may or may not have been drawn to both the discipline and drama. And maybe this would be a good time for you to give us your earlier bio, which you liken to a Billy Elliot-like beginning for yourself.
Yes, so as you can tell, I'm English and I've got a very northern accent. So yes, in fact, the film Billy Elliot's quite difficult for me. You must have all seen it or seen the musical. So it's quite difficult for me to watch that sometimes because it's quite emotional. It literally is almost to the point of my upbringing. So whereas I had a kind of difficult time at school. In other words, I was always at the back of the class in the corner or stood on a chair for it. So in those days, you were just a dunce. You were just sort of like, now you can say, well, I'm dyslexic. So then it's a little bit more. But then they didn't know what that word was. So I was suddenly my mother had a school and she had a boy in there who wouldn't go on stage unless it was somebody else. So I got a little bit of money, and I said, as long as it's not ballet, tights, or anything like that. And I think I did Fagin out of Oliver or something like this. And she had a friend just popped into the studio who was an RAD examiner. And afterwards they had this conversation, did you see your son at the back? And I was just sort of like taking the mickey, skipping around or whatever. And she said, I think he's got talent. So they went to speak to my father to see if they could ask me if I wanted to dance. And my father said yes, and then was horrified when I said I wanted to do it. But it was the only time that I felt that I was free. So it was a really important part. My father was a great man. He lived in Scarborough. He was born there. And for the whole of his life, he never told anybody what I did. He moved the family to York so I could do ballet lessons. He had 4 jobs so I could go to London, but never, ever admitted what I did. In fact, you said about Female Garde. I did Colas in La Female Garde, which is a very famous Ashton ballet. And I didn't know at the time, but Sir Fred was watching and came backstage for the curtain calls. And I said to my father, do you want to meet Sir Frederick Ashton? He went, no. I'll see you at some point. So he left. So it's kind of a little bit like that. But going to the Billy Elliot side of it is all that upbringing. But then the final end image is Adam Cooper as the male swan in Swan Lake. So I was on the board of Matthew Bourne's company, and Matthew started talking about ideas and wanted to know more and more. And I took Adam Cooper to see one of his shows, and so they were introduced, and then Matthew started talking about Swan Lake and everything. So then I was involved in all that side of it. So it kind of is the full circle, really.
And we're going to actually get to that chance, that opportunity that you gave for Matthew Bourne.
Can I just say one? And then what I
please.
did do, at 16, everybody in England wants to go to the Royal Ballet School. So they found money to go for me to go and audition. And the Royal Ballet School said I had no talent whatsoever. They were probably right, but if somebody says no to me, I'm going to prove you wrong. So 4 years later, I was in the company.
So you said 16, yes? Yes. So a lot of times, often, dancers will start out quite young in companies. And here's where coaching can really help, because it's... I don't mean this as an insult to say that someone might not have experienced certain life situations that will that are in line with what their character. Let's say they're performing a character in a ballet, and maybe someone has never experienced that in their life before. So coaching, I believe, helps a young dancer or someone who's maybe just at a different place in their life and hasn't had that experience before. I was reading in the New York Times, I think last week, Gillian Murphy, a principal dancer at American Ballet Theater, right, is retiring. And she spoke about how when she was a young dancer, she was rehearsing a ballet, and let's just say that the character is not having a good time. But she was responding and dancing in a way that responded to the music, which she found to be upbeat and lilting. And a colleague of hers said, "You're dancing this like you're happy?" And as a young dancer, it was a wonderful moment for her. She took stock and realized, I think I need some help with this. I need to think about, what am I dancing on stage? And is it a story, and is it a character? So I guess I would like you to start talking a little bit about that coaching that goes in. The company has so much legacy ballets. We are going to go to the future again, but I just wonder how you tackle that.
Well, it's... Two answers really to what you're saying is that this thing about not knowing how you think you're emoting, or you think you're telling the story, but it's not coming across. So you can be thinking, oh, it's such a wonderful moment, you look like you're in pain, you're frowning or whatever, but you're feeling it all inside, but it comes across wrong. So you have to be able to do that. But the craft of our business is so important, and it's something that does get skipped over. And those of you at the show today, so you saw some of my very, very young dancers on today, and I said, okay, you're going to get this, and you're going to be coached, but I'm going to keep giving you chances and then holding you back a bit until you learn the craft. You have to know what it's like to be on the side when Giselle's in the mad scene. She needs somebody you go to and they believe you, and you've got to experience that side of it in order that when it is your turn, if you get that chance, you want people there rather than just going, oh yeah, I've done my steps now, that's fine. So it is, but the passing the where I think that I'm lucky because of Margaret, and I kind of, if I can say myself a little bit.
Would you introduce Margaret in case?
So Margaret Barbieri was a principal dancer. Well, she was with the Royal Ballet for 25 years. She was a principal there for 22 years. So she was suddenly zoomed into straight away. It was like, there was a Covent Garden. It was a brand new production of Giselle. She was like, the director knocked on the dressing room door and said, Barbieri, get out of costume, out of peasant costume. She started to cry a little bit because she thought she wasn't good enough. And he said, you're dancing Giselle on Saturday matinee. And then it was kind of like a storybook from there. But it's that thing of, you've got to experience it. And you've got to, and so we have that passion. And I think by preserving the old ballets, we're so committed to that we then the dancers are getting that far more. We haven't got the great people anymore around. Like Sir Fred, Mr. Balanchine, Mr. Tudor. I mean, Anthony Tudor, he choreographed a ballet on my wife, and then he coached her in Lilac Garden. And his comment to her in Lilac Garden was, if you over-emote like that other Italian ballerina, and I'm in the audience, I'm going to shout from the back. And if I'm dead, I'm going to come and haunt you. Because you have to do the choreography, and my choreography tells the story. And that's, again, it's not about getting your legs up if it's the wrong thing. I mean, it's valuable to do that. So passing on the history and the coaching, and just being able to sort of give them that information that they can nowadays it's easy, they can look on their phone, but to go and research, Robert Helpman, who it was Dante Sonata was choreographed on, people like that, giving them that information. And I don't think it's because of me. I think it's because of the way that we are. But we were in Washington at the Kennedy Center, and there's a big Ballet Russe exhibition, and we had half a morning off. And I turned up at the exhibition, and every single member of the company was there. So they were really understood the importance and everything. I'm
going to... So many of the greats, like you say, are no longer here, and hopefully we are living in a time when there are present new greats, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But speaking of Dante Sonata, and we're talking about Margaret Barbieri because also she has overseen directly or indirectly a lot of the coaching that goes on in the company for some of these legacy ballets, and being able to pass on the direct information to help dancers understand what the nuances are is just priceless. I'm quoting something that I wrote in the Pillow Note essay about Dante Sonata and about how this coaching just can really help a work continue to live. So here's the quote from Jonathan Gray in the Post Gramilano. Quote, in Dante Sonata, one can see the then modern influences on Ashton of Kurt Jooss and even Martha Graham, as well as the inspiration of the extraordinary groupings used in ballets by Bronislawa Nijinská. The humanity and musicality, however, is purely Ashtonian. The dancers of today are sometimes embarrassed to perform overtly theatrical works like this, but the artists of Sarasota Ballet seem to relish their roles in Dante Sonata. It just speaks volumes about, right? I mean, the dancers, of course, the dancers get the credit and the coaching that they got.
Oh, that's the first time I've heard that. I don't read anything.
You didn't read my Pillow Note?
I don't read your Pillow Note. I don't read the reviews. So it's sort of like, they tell me when they're bad, so that's all I ever hear is the bad side of it. But no, but it is that, again, it's just that commitment. You've got to have that organic inside you to really go for it. And you can't do anything half-heartedly. You've got to do it. It's there.
So something that when Margaret, I know Maggie to you, but when the three of us were speaking a couple of weeks ago, she mentioned that when she was dancing, she always appreciated having a character to infuse the steps. But I wonder about this point. Does this point to a particular challenge a performer might have when it comes to an abstract dance, when there's no specific character? People might argue that something along the lines of the steps, the movement should speak for itself, but there is more to it than that. So, how do you work with that?
Yeah, I mean, some dancers are classroom dancers. Some dancers are natural on stage and perform on stage. Some people have that inside, that natural acting ability, and then some kind of like feel like sometimes you're doing an abstract piece and you go, don't feel it too much. Listen to the music, let that expand rather than add any extra mannerisms, if you want to call them. So it is a very fine line. I think the hardest thing is actually getting dancers of today to understand the character side of it. And it's a big lesson. I talk about me, but a big lesson of mine. We were very fortunate because at Sadler's Wells you had all the visiting companies coming in, all the dance companies, Dance Theatre of Harlem and Porter, everybody used to come to Sadler's Wells. But we also had the Royal Shakespeare, D'Oyly Carte, all these different people coming in. So I became very close friends with an actor, and he was one of these, a very portly man, and he was an actor that everybody knew him. They didn't know his name, but he was just, everybody would walk down the street and they go, oh, that's that man, or is that you? And he'd go, yeah, sure. And he was called Mr. Innocent. And Mr. Innocent used to literally come to see my shows. I'd get him tickets or he'd buy tickets. And he was a big ballet fan. And he was a big fan of Maggie's, but knew me before we were together. But he came, and we used to always then meet up either after the show or a few days later and, chat. And I did this role in London. It's been recorded, I shouldn't say this really. I did this leading role in London, and he never contacted me. And then a few days went past, and I went, oh no, something's happened. So I rang him, and it was like, hello, Mr. Innocent. I went, oh, Harold, how are you? We normally meet up, and he said, well, I saw enough of you on Saturday because every time you turned your back, it was Iain Webb, and I got bored. And this was a really close friend of mine. And I went, that taught me such a big lesson that no matter what, you've got to be in character the full time. I will go on about Mr. Innocent. So when he passed away, it was like there was the big service. Alan Rickman was talking about him, and they all knew he'd done, the Hollywood films, the Shakespeare, everything. But his passion was ballet. And they said, now, he only ever achieved that in Maggie's kitchen while she was making spaghetti. He did Rothbart with her while we were all going on. So it was kind of quite nice, Alan Rickman suddenly acknowledging, the ballet world.
And the reason, did you say spaghetti? Okay.
She makes
the reason
all
that
the
Iain
stuff,
and Margaret are having spaghetti is because, in case you didn't know, they're married. So we hadn't mentioned that. So all of this talk about, how to embody characters and how to perform fully, whether your back is turned or not, that's, very much animating the stage. And now the future, animating the future. So as with dancers, young or new choreographers need to be given chances. And you alluded to this earlier. You've indeed commissioned many ballets from a range of choreographers over the years. Some were, quote unquote, young choreographers who are getting either their first or an early boost by you or the company taking a chance on them. So could you talk about those notable first commissions opportunities that you and Margaret offered? One was to Christopher Wheeldon, and maybe introduce Christopher Wheeldon and Matthew Bourne a little bit in case there's anyone who's not quite familiar.
So obviously Christopher Wheeldon's one of the most sought after choreographers. So, he does it, and we would never have done this, but he always acknowledges Margaret because she gave him his first commissioned work because she had a big school and they were the first performing company, student company to perform around England and everything. So she commissioned Chris. And when we were in terrible times in Sarasota years ago, and it was like touch and go if we're going to survive or not. And Margaret bumped into Chris's mum and dad, and they said, and how's Ian? And I said, well, it's really difficult. She said, well, have you asked Chris for anything? So basically, we did Christopher Wheeldon's ballet because his mum and dad told him he had to give me them. So, and the same with Matthew Bourne. Do you all know who Matthew Bourne is? So Matthew made the sort of the male Swan Lake was what's really made his name. Although he'd had the company, we used to say it was like 9 dancers in a van going around till suddenly he did Swan Lake. And he was with us all the time, a lot of the time. So he would be, he'd go with Margaret to the opera house. So he would learn and meet people and everything like this. But he'd obviously never worked, because he trained at Larbin, he'd never worked with anybody who'd gone on point. So Margaret commissioned him to make Boutique. Now, he's known for taking, Swan Lake and changing it, and Cinderella and changing it all like this. So he did Boutique, and it was based the same music as Massine used for La Boutique Fantasque. But instead of the toy shop, he set it in 1960 Carnaby Street. So it was all the Beatles, it was Ken and Barbie, it was all things like this. But he literally would be going, now, can we do this on point? And what happens if you do this? So it was the first time we'd ever worked with really classically trained dancers. So that's that part of it. But I have absolutely not even a centimetre of choreographic talent. I mean, and I'm so glad I had my career when I did, because these amazing dancers have to do, and I make them do it, but all the different styles. And I was a bit of a big stiffarder, really. I was, just doing this rather than being able to move the way they can now. So I wanted to know if there was any company members who wanted to do that, if they were interested. And I kind of then gave a group of them the chance. I could never really, I was pleased with what we achieved, but it didn't really fulfill what I wanted, because I really wanted somebody to be able to oversee and be a guide of them, and I wanted them to understand. Even now, I still talk about trying to do something where young choreographers can come and we just talk about lighting. We have a seminar on lighting or design. There's so many elements that of the craft that they need to know. So we've given a lot of people the chance, but it's always a gamble. You don't know what you're going to get, even with established choreographers. A world premiere, commission work, you don't know till you get on there.
Perfect segue. So a very established choreographer is currently your resident, artist in residence, Jessica Lang, not a new choreographer. Yesterday in the post-show talk, Jessica Lang was the choreographer of the last piece on the program. I presume most of you went to the show earlier, and if you did not, I hope you can go later to all of the show, the whole show. Lots to see and enjoy. So Jessica commented yesterday that she, let's see, how did she phrase it? She believes that the artist / choreographer in residence should be the protocol for all companies going forward, rather than, I mean, there's, and I don't think that she was saying some of the flybys, kind of a choreographer coming in and staging a work and then going, but that this model of someone being embedded in a company allows for really getting to know the dancers. So what do you think about that as the protocol going forward?
I mean, that's the whole thing about it, was that I didn't want to just say one piece. Because also, and the same with a choreographer will be, sort of like suddenly the flavour of the month of the year, and everybody wants to do them, and it's a lot of pressure. And especially, actually, if I can touch on it, when it becomes female choreographers, female choreographers are like this, which is great, and we've got to commit. But they're being asked to do so many pieces that they don't have time, in my opinion, to really stand back and sort of do a post-mortem on the work or revisit it or anything like this. And I kind of go, well, no, I'd rather have, somebody who's there and they're doing, so this is now the third commission that I've given to Jessica, and we did one of her other pieces. So, but they then become comfortable, and there's less pressure on the creative strain to make something if they feel comfortable with the dancers. And the dancers are going to give far more if they feel there's that great atmosphere in the studio. So I think for me, I like that. I mean, I do bring in an odd person to do something. But when I'm looking at that, the people that I want to sort of Jessica's different because she's very established, but it's investing in them and giving them the tools and the ability to do things. It's the same as when somebody, a choreographer, comes in and recreates something. And a little bit, it's a chip on my shoulder from when I dance, but I don't believe the director should say, I'd like, we want to do this ballet, and here's your cast, da 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 da. You're going like, but it's their work. They know what they've got and how it is and they quite often have been really thrilled about it because they've picked somebody and I've gone inside, oh, okay, and gone, wow, I never saw that. I didn't believe they could do that. Hans van Manen, the great Dutch choreographer, he was like, he was amazing. He came into the studio, this is a long, long time ago, and he came in and he had an Armani American flying suit, which was like one-off made. And I was like, Armani? He looked and he came in and he was like this and he was ground into the floor and he was all like this. It took me, and he wanted me to do the lead in Five Tangos straight away. And it took me 5 years before, because you had to go down everybody else. Yet he wanted it. So I now believe that if the choreographer wants that dancer, then go for it. Show me, and if you think they're going to give your ballet something different, then that's their job, and I'm just there to support and guide and try to advance whatever we can with them.
So, as expected, we did not get to everything I have here, but if you have nothing, I'll go back to it. But we would definitely love to hear some questions or comments. And Alexa has a microphone for you. So who has a question that they would like to ask?
You've been talking about characters, about acting. But some ballets, like the first one we saw this afternoon, as far as I can tell, are totally devoid of characters and acting. And the happy face that seems to be the style, is that intended? Is that, we're enjoying this?
Yeah, I always go back and I always say, like today before birthday, now, all of you, bend your body, sparkle, jewels, and enjoy yourself. Because if you're out there and you don't enjoy it, you're not going to enjoy it. Unless it's, so it's that with birthday offering, it's more the style of the dancers that it was made on. So it's all like, and it's just pure beauty rather than, sometimes it gets a little bit too, Broadway or whatever, but do you know what I mean? But it's a very fine line between all the stuff, but, it's enjoyment. You've got to enjoy it, and if you show it. And sometimes they say, hold back a little bit.
Thank you.
And that's part of also, I suppose, maturity. And again, it's someone having more practice at something, but having someone like you be able to help them with that.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I was lucky enough to see the world premiere of The Spider's Feast. And in that piece, each of the different insects had such a different way of moving that it really seemed to give them their character. But could you perhaps speak a little bit about how you coached the company into embodying mayflies, hornets, ants, the spider?
So this is something we commissioned by Sir David Bintley. And it was a piece that, the set design and everything was fantastic, but they were all insects and, the spider and all that. With that, it was really 100% David's choreography and the way that he demonstrated it. Because he again, David Bintley, Sir David, came from the Royal Ballet School and started choreographing, I think, within the second year of him joining the company. So very much Sir Fred and Madame Dame Nanette de Valois guided him and everything. So, but that's his... And the same with the dancers when they were working with it. They were kind of going like, watching him going like, and he gets down there and does everything. So that's one of those, yeah.
Can I get a picture with you after this?
Of course you can, yes.
Like all of us?
Okay, all of you, that's fine. So you had a question? Just, yeah.
When you commission a relatively young choreographer, do you ahead of time specify the sort of thing you're looking for?
Well, it's interesting because when I've done it sometimes, especially with Ricardo, and he's not around, so I'm going to say, but Ricardo is a principal dancer, Ricardo Graziano, and he's done about 10 or more ballets for us. But I had this thing with him where I was going, after so long, right, I need you to do a middle piece. And it was like, well, why? I said, because you have to learn that it's like going into a restaurant. You've got to have a starter, main course, dessert. He couldn't get it. He couldn't understand it. I just want to choreograph. And I went, well, also musically it doesn't work. But I'm asking you to do an end piece, which is normally something quite jolly to go out on or something. But he found that quite difficult to do. And the same with him with, he should now be able to, we should be commissioning something for him to choreograph to. And then also be able to tell a story ballet. Story ballets are very difficult. Spiders was, Bentley was excellent at telling story ballets. But nowadays you don't get that many people who can choreograph story ballets or full lengths, really. Does that kind of answer? A little bit.
I love the last piece by Jessica Lange, and I would love to understand more how the announcement at the beginning said she started with 2 paintings. Then clearly the dancers were imitating the brush strokes and the colors and everything. And there's a director and there's Jessica Lange. How did all of those things relate to each other?
So basically, it's one of those with Jessica where she had the idea, she was doing the paintings as inspiration and things, and then we talked about them being at the back cloth of that. And then the element of chaos and the element of paint and color and everything like this. She has a very clear idea of articulating exactly that. For me, it's just, I just watched this amazing sort of like, it's not really the paintings coming to life, but it's the paintings crossing over and everything. So it's sort of, there's nothing to really story to read into it necessarily. But some people have more complicated ideas of things and you go like, didn't get that at all. So she basically, it was a brand new piece. So from the first step right the way through, she did it. It was only her. So and she basically, we had 5 weeks to prepare for this. So she was here for 2 weeks and then went to London because she was making a ballet for the Royal Ballet School and then came back. So she probably did about 4 weeks to put that all together. So, and again, it's again, in a way, we've kind of got this thing of where the dance, we've got, in a way, I always say it's the best art form. Because you've got, these amazing bodies, you've got the choreography, the steps, you've got the music comes through the body, you've got the designs, we can have a narrator, we can have a singers, we can bring all the other art forms to ours. It's more difficult to do the other way around. So with planning, I can't tell you when it's going to be, but it will happen. I've got, there's going to be a triple bill of all Prokofiev music. And it's going to start off with, and I've spoken to Edward Liang about it, possibly for him to choreograph a brand new piece to Prokofiev. And I won't tell him what music to use because he's got to find that and come out. But the back cloth will be this big painting of all these colored bodies and what it is that it's because that was Prokofiev's son painted that and gave it to Margaret and I as a wedding present. So I thought if we put Prokofiev's son's painting, his music, and a world premiere, then I think we'll probably be doing Prodigal Son, which he obviously, Balanchine, made for the Ballet Russe with Prokofiev music. And then Prokofiev's grandson's a composer. So I thought if we did the end with the grandson. Now, I'm selling it all on music or the name of Prokofiev. But different ideas come up like that. So there's no, my mind goes all the time. It's a bit of a nightmare for everybody around me.
When you mention you're selling it on the music, when are you compelled to add that budget line for live musicians?
All the time.
What's the tipping point?
It's the one thing that I found it very difficult coming to America because I'm spoiled because we have live music all the time. In England we have pianists for a class, we have pianists in rehearsals, but here it's not. So I have, for instance, in my contract, I have that I won't teach class to recorded music. Because you kind of like, I want to do different stuff. So, but it's that thing of we're constantly trying to raise money for live music because that's the difference. Just it goes in your body and it comes out, and it's not. And you've got sort of like there's you got the conductor there, and you go like So when we were on tour, there's a famous conductor called a ballet conductor, one of the greatest one, and he comes to work with us, Barry Wordsworth. He's the most fantastic ballet conductor. We used to pray that it was him on a Saturday night in Newcastle because the last train to London was at a certain time and he'd know where to push it so that we could all get packed and get back to London. But it's also suddenly you've got the conductor there and it depends how he's feeling. Or, the bug of my life in a way is that, and in some ballets it works, but where now people want to balance forever. And you're going like, oh, hello, what about the respect for the composer? What about the, so it's, I'm used to having somebody there, but here we're not, we don't have that luxury. When I do as much as I can, but it's always, please, more, as Oliver would say, yeah.
Hi, this might be a difficult question, which is, it was wonderful we saw the show the other day, on Thursday, but, one was from 1940 and from 1956 and then from today. And the amazing thing is to what extent does the reality of what's going on in our world on the one side, and then this thing called technology on the other, so much changes and affects the thought between what you're trying to present and to not just dance, but also have dance be a representation of thoughts, thinkings, feelings.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of, as artists, we're always brought up that you don't speak to critics. Sorry. You don't speak to critics, and you don't. I've lost my train of thought now because I suddenly went into a panic moment.
If it helps you not panic, I am no longer in the role of critic. That's why I'm sitting here next to you now.
But you sort of like I've totally lost my train of thought now. But it's sort of. You're brought up in a way of where you can't, you can't necessarily voice your politics as you should, because we're an art form and we've got to try and do so, and it's very difficult not to do. So when you can bring works in that just pushes the button a little bit, it's very good to do that. Modern technology, again, some of these pieces you go like. The lighting nowadays, it's all LEDs, so it doesn't have the same feeling, and it's all great. There was an amazing lady, and I met her when I was 16, and she was her daughter was my teacher, who hated me. And therefore, this lady loved me, and it was Madame Rombert, Dame Madame Rombert, and so Madame Rombert would talk to me, and she had this very strong Polish accent and things like this. But there's an amazing story about her where the company Rombert was on tour, and they used to have a record player. Nowadays, they don't know what. Oh, except it's coming back. Vinyls are coming back, and they used to literally just drop the needle in the right place and play. And they're going, Madame Rombert, we need to start moving to, sort of reel to reel, which will come back at some point. And she went, no. And it suddenly, they eventually did, and it stretched, and or it snapped or whatever. And in the middle of this piece, it went deathly silence. And suddenly, after a few minutes, you heard, modern technology, ugh! Everybody got what she felt. But sometimes you lose the the organic feeling of some of this when it's now all modern and things. Projections and things. Let's get these artists to be able to paint and do.
Well, as promised, we did go back to the future and back again. But it is time for us to end this part of the conversation, but I'm sure there'll be many more. And thank you very much. Well, hold on. I want to say thank you to Alexa and to Kat and to, I think maybe Tyler is here, and everyone at the Pillow and the archives and the whole Pillow staff is extraordinary. And thank you so much, Iain and Margaret and the Sarasota Ballet. Thank you.
Just one thing. The archives are really important. It's so important to have all this. So I'd like to give from my personal collection a book, although you have it in there, it's a book of Markova, Dame Alicia Markova, who basically came here with Shura Bandam Danilova and Baronova and people like that and helped save Jacob's Pillow. So this is signed by Dame Alicia. And then there's also, further in the book, there's photographs of Margaret with Dame Alicia being coached, and it's signed by Margaret. So you've got the two signatures if you want to pass that on to Norton. And but that's just a little extra thing for...
So, for those who weren't at the pre-show talk, Iain, in his personal dance book collection, has over 3,500 dance books and is a bit of a collector and calls himself a bunhead. So, hey, this is extraordinary. This is extraordinary. On behalf of the Pillow, I think I say thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.